So, schönen Morgen aus Deutschland, glorious Bundesrepublik. My name is Peter Weis, and I'm a German football writer based here in Baden-Württemberg. I'm a Bundesliga correspondent and columnist for Bully News. And this summer, it's been my great pleasure to volunteer for She Plays, the fantasy site that is based in Australia and New Zealand, to cover the 2023 Women's World Cup. Like many football writers and many footballers in general, it's always a real treat to volunteer in the service of women's football. You may wonder why so many of us footballers are interested in the women's game. It's of course because we've all played co-ed. There's probably no other sport in which the genders mix so freely, particularly in both indoor and outdoor leagues. So it's been a real treat. The She Plays team, they've been working very hard. They've built an excellent website, and as of this Wednesday morning, they're all convening in Sydney to take a load off, enjoy the semi-final, and enjoy the fellowship of one another. My greetings to everyone. Over the course of the summer, myself and fellow tactical writer Rachel Madgil have been working on the She Plays news site, the blog, to write tactical outlook and tactical review pieces that we've been posting. And what we're going to do in a little featurette today, this will be my last match covering a dream matchup in the semifinals between England and Australia, is do a little featurette about how a tournament's tactics writer works. So first and foremost, let's take a look at the desk here. We have we have some books about complex mathematical problems here. Banach spaces are actually mathematical problems that require one to think in infinitely many dimensions. These are a little bit complex for the problem that we have to solve this morning, which happens to be football. So we're going to put all of these fun yet challenging mathematical problems out of the way, pick up the scouting reports, pick up articles that were printed out from trade publications, footballing publications, sporting publications from both countries. Actually, being a tournament tactics writer requires a lot of research and a lot of legwork, but it's quite fulfilling, not to mention quite addicting, and I'll tell you why in a little bit. So, we're going to talk a little bit about the team's tactical journeys, the two teams that are facing off, squaring off today, their tactical journeys through the tournament. Before doing so, once again, my best wishes to everyone in Sydney. And I'm very, very happy to be working for She Plays today because I woke up this morning with a problem to solve, namely football. Football combines the absolute thrill of problem solving, logical problem solving, together with the elegance of prose. It all convalesces there on the football pitch. So we're going to have a fun time today watching a great semifinal. Okay, so we have a very interesting tactical matchup today. Sarina Wiegman is the trainer for the Three Lionesses, the defending European champions, and she also won the 2017 Euros with the Dutch. So the two-time defending European champion head coach is squaring off against Tony Gustafsson for Australia. He was actually an assistant to U.S. women's national team trainer Jill Ellis, and he won the 2015 and 2019 World Cups with her. So we've got a two-time defending European trainer against a two-time defending World Championship assistant coach, that is. In any event, it should be a lot of fun, and one of the joys of being a tactical writer is that you get to see some of the interesting trends that develop throughout a tournament. We're going to start with the Lionesses here, the Europeans, the defending champs, who lined up in a 4-2-3-1 in their opening match against Haiti. Now, as a matter of fact, this sort of 4-2-3-1 is what some of us tactics heads refer to as a 6-7-8 stepstone constellation. The midfield link-up play is actually driven by some specific staggers. In this case, you see Walsh operates as a 6, Toon operates as an 8, and Stanway is the midway station, most appropriately named, one might say. So this is actually the same constellation that won the Euros, albeit there were 3 personnel differences. Ellen White was the lead striker, Beth Mead was on the wing here, and Fran Kirby was operating as the 8, sort of pseudo-10. So with these 3 new players, there had been some issues for England coming into the tournament, and after they only eked out a 1-0 victory over Haiti in the opening group stage, there were some changes. What Wiegman did is she moved Greenwood in here to pair alongside with Bright, sacrificed Carter. Rachel Daly, who was trained as a striker, served as the left back. And the other personnel change was bringing in Lauren James, who we've all been extremely impressed with, to replace Hemp. And she kept with this 6-7-8 stepstone constellation until Kira Walsh got injured. Then Stanway moved back to pair with Laura Coombs in a more rigid 4-2-3-1 for the duration of the second group stage match against Denmark. They also won that one narrowly, 1-0. And of course, with Walsh's injury and the fact that the two offensive performances weren't all of that compelling, we got a big change ahead of match 3, and that was when they won 6-0 against China. Wiegmann is not known for tinkering too much with their tactics, but we got this very interesting 4-3-1-2, which at times functions more like a straight 3-5-2. But in any event, Zellum came in to take Walsh's place. She paired with Stanway on a straight horizontal axis. James functioned as the 10, Hemp's back in the lineup working on a two-striker set alongside Russo. Daly maintains her place, of course. And this was extremely effective in that final group stage match against China. Couple of speed bumps as we get to the knockouts. In the round of 16, they were only able to advance against Nigeria on penalties. Moreover, James incurred a red card and a 2-match suspension. When we get to the quarterfinals, a Colombian team that beat my German side, but we've all been impressed with their vigor. They've been incredible. Nearly took it off them. They only got by 2-1. So we'll take a look at the current state of England tactics as they stand after match 5. We're just ahead of match 6. Couple of question marks here. One, Daly seems to have had a form dip, so has Toon. And when we look at the horizontal axial chain of Stanway and Walsh, those two are having a little bit of difficulty synchronizing their movements. Walsh obviously wants to drop back rather than advance with Stanway, and in some cases this squeezed Toon out. So I'm going to get the team sheet soon, and these are the 3 things that I'm keeping an eye on. I want to see what's going to happen with Daly, I want to see what's going to happen with Toon, and I really want to see how the midfield is going to be set up. Might be the case that she returns to that 6-7-8 split stagger. We'll start piecing the puzzle together once I get those team sheets. Next up, we'll talk Matildas. Okay, so Australia. Congratulations to all the She Plays volunteers that get to see their team in the semis. Perhaps they'll make it all the way to the final and win their first ever Women's World Cup. So what's been most impressive about Gustafsson's tactics as the tournament has progressed is obviously the fact that Samantha Kerr, one of the best female footballers in the world, an absolute living legend, the talisman of the team and the poster child of the tournament, was ruled out due to injury shortly before kickoff on opening day. Gustafsson had to compensate for the fact that he was going to be missing her for at least 2 matches. Now, Kerr has come back. She's worked the last 2 games as a substitute, and I think I'm going to project her to start this time. But we're going to go through the group stages here to see how Australia made this happen without their star player. So in the first match, a 1-0 victory over the Republic of Ireland, it was the captain, the serving captain, Steph Catley, who converted a penalty, and they were able to get through. We have a 4-4-2. Caitlin Ford, Mary Fowler, Courtney Vine, and Hayley Raso pairing on the wings, Kaya Crooney-Cross, Katrina Gorey, and this back 4, which is extremely talented. You got your veterans in Catley and Kennedy, and these new girls, Carpenter and Hunt, who've been quite impressive. He made some changes ahead of the second group stage fixture against Nigeria. He had to, because the victory was a little bit narrow against Ireland. What we saw in that match was the Matildas actually lose despite the fact that they dominated in every statistical category, including XG. They had a 3-to-1 ratio. But here's how he lined them up there, which was actually quite effective. So he brought in Emily van Egmond, one of the veterans on the team there. Ford moved up to center forward. Vine and Raso, again, pairing on the wings. Crooney-Cross moves into midfield to pair with van Egmond. Katrina Gorey drops back to work as sort of a semi-bolt-lock sweeper. And this was extremely impressive, particularly from Gorey. And the reason that they ultimately ended up dropping the match is there was a defensive miscommunication between Kennedy and Arnold after Kennedy accidentally kicked a opposition Nigeria player in the chest, and she was rattled after that, so there was a mistake. Sometimes you can win everything on the tactics board, but the result just doesn't go your way. In any event, they needed to get a victory against Canada in the final group stage match, and we saw Gustafsson deploy his 3rd novel tactical constellation of the tournament. In this case, Fowler worked as the center forward, Ford and Raso wingers. Van Egmond was definitely a 10, although she was quite a subdued one. Gorey paired again with Crooney-Cross in midfield. The back 4 remained the same, although sometimes Kennedy and Hunt were flipping their slants, you could see, just to mix things up on play out of the back. Sort of an interesting development to keep an eye on moving forward. But they won against Canada. They were through to the knockouts, and in the round of 16, we saw this. another novel tactical constellation in that Ford and Raiso were working up as advanced wingers. To my eyes, what I could see on the overhead was that Fowler was operating as a false 9, that is sort of a subdued striker. Van Egmond a little further up to function as a more traditional 10, Quinny Cross-Gorey back for the same with slant shifts and everything. Once again, it gets the job done. The Matildas beat Denmark, and we head on to the quarterfinals. Now, what happened in the quarterfinals against France is forever going to be remembered as one of the greatest Women's World Cup fixtures in history. Just wild penalty shootout after a wild game that could have gone either way, with Mackenzie Arnold missing from the spot herself, then saving twice after being off her line. It's insane. We don't need to go into that. All that's really relevant here is that I wanted to point out that Gustafsson has returned the team to the 4-4-2 that he had at the beginning of the tournament. And why is he doing this? Because he's preparing for Samantha Kerr to come back in. In this case, one definitely saw Van Egmond function up as a striker. She was a placeholder for Kerr. Samantha Kerr, Samantha Kja, as we call her in German. Forgive it if my pronunciation is not necessarily very consistent. But in any event, this 4-4-2 was built for Sam Kerr to come back in, and she worked 65 minutes as a substitute. She should start this time. Now, the developments that I want to keep an eye on here as I prepare to look at the team sheets is I want to see how Kerr is going to factor into this constellation. I think the best thing to do, it would still be a 4-4-2, but you would move Caitlin Ford over central to operate as a service striker for Kerr. Fowler had a lively game. She's maybe trying to do a little bit too much. She probably needs a rest. She's very, very creative, very inventive player, but missed some chances, and that sort of constitutes a form dip. We had some form dips in the defensive line. That's not something I'm worried about. The same 4 will start. But my idea would be to have Kerr up there, Ford as a service striker, Raiso and Vine comes back in the lineup to work as wingers. We're going to see, as the team sheets are released, tactics writer's favorite part of covering one of these matches, how it all pieces together. All right, so the team sheets are in, and we have 2 personnel changes for Gustafsson's Matildas. Alana Kennedy, the central defender, is rumored to be sick. It could be that she hasn't been feeling well for the last couple of matches. As we discussed earlier, she had something of a shaky tournament. So it will be Claire Polkinghorn, a veteran that we're all familiar with. I've been covering her since the 2011 Women's World Cup, who takes over in central defense. And Samantha Kerr is in the starting lineup. She takes the place of Emily Van Egmond. Fowler also retains her place, so it looks to be Ford and Raiso on the wings, but we're going to have to see. The biggest question I have coming into this, and I'll be keeping an eye on this on the overhead tactical cam, is how this top axis works. Do the strikers follow these slants? Does Fowler fold in underneath Kerr? Does Ford play a little bit more advanced? My idea was to put Ford more advanced because she's been so incredibly robust on the ball over the course of this tournament. I mean, it's just been amazing. She's been almost superhuman, how she holds everybody off with her incredible physical strength and keeps possession with brilliant touches. So it's going to be really interesting to see how Ford operates, how Fowler operates, and how Kerr operates. Raiso, I believe, is going to stay on the right wing. She's incredibly strong there. She doesn't need to go anywhere. So we'll have a look and see if there's anything going on interesting on the overhead tactical cam on these top 2 axes regarding these 3 players, I should say. And we have no changes to the England 11. Serena Wiegman is going to stick with everybody, including Daly and Toon. What we have to keep an eye out here for is what I was talking about. Do forgive my my writing companion there is trying to bust into the video. Yes, I have plenty of work for you to sit on. There you are. Important to have a faithful writing companion when you're doing heavy research and writing. In any event, we want to see how this midfield access works. Do Walsh and Stanway operate with a split stagger? That should be very interesting. How is Toon going to move in between or behind the 2 strikers? Should also be very interesting. Further back, I think everything is set. Whenever you're dealing with a back 3, it's really interesting to see whether the the central of the 3 central defenders is going to operate on an inverted pivot or a straight pivot or as a straight pivot runner. Bright's been pocketing. She's improved steadily throughout the tournament, so I think she's going to stay there. Again, here, we're keeping an eye on this midfield axis and how the stagger works and how or where Toon is going to go in order to improve her play. Next, it's time to bust out the laptop and all the stuff, and I'll show you how we write the report. Okay, here we are at the next workstation, and this is how we put together the tactical report. You'll note that I've whittled down what is a phone book's size worth of research down to the more salient pieces here. I have some pieces from The Guardian on both teams. I also have some previous research that I did on these teams, some previous reports that I wrote from them, both from this tournament and tournaments past. I covered the 2011 Women's World Cup, also 2015, 2019, and all of the Euros in between. So I have more information on England than I do Australia, but still quite a bit of information, and it's here if I need it for a quick reference. We have the game on the television here, and then also on my laptop, I'll show you which screens I keep active. Right now, the German public broadcasters' feeds are synchronized, but in a few minutes, when the game kicks off, we're going to have the normal view on the television, and we'll have the overhead tactical feed here on my computer so I can follow developments on the overhead cam and figure out the shape. On the topic of figuring out the shape, I've already got my line-up cards programmed in with the starting 11 actors, and this is how they're projected to start. But as I said in the previous segment, there's going to be developments. There's going to be things moving around, so I can move these players around based on what they're operating in and what I think the intended shape is. There's obviously a lot of improvisation on the football pitch, but most teams go into a match with a set shape that they should operate in most of the time. That's what constitutes a head coach's game plan. Two other things, or a couple other things I'll show you. We have the Outlook section that I wrote for She Plays, so I can quick reference that as well. If there's anything that I want to highlight, some trends, some duels that I had already said to keep an eye out for. And I have 2 minute-by-minute reports loaded here from German media. This is from the Sportschau as well, and the other one here is from Germany's preeminent footballing publication, Kicker magazine. Both of these are incredibly reliable. You may ask yourself, okay, you're watching the game on television, you're watching it on an overhead feed, and you're reading 2 detailed minute-by-minute reports at the same time. We human beings are not the best at multitasking. And the reason that I have all of these information streams operating simultaneously is that I don't want to miss anything. The last thing I'm going to show you is the match report. It's in my WordPress engine here. I've already got the outline set out, and I will be typing these up over the course of the match so as to get it filed not too long after the full-time whistle. And it might be the case that I missed something. It might be the case that I didn't have my eye on the overhead for a second, or I wasn't watching this regular feed. The minute-by-minute reports from these 2 publications go into great detail. Sometimes, if there's ever a relevant play, they will let me know who was involved in it, where it originated from, how the chance came, all of that stuff. So that's about it. That's how we put it together, and next thing we'll do is we'll check in at the half, and I'll let you know how it's going. Well, it is halftime, and the score is 1-0 England, 1-0 to the Europeans, the Lionesses. Probably a very disappointing first opening 45 for the Matildas fans, and unfortunately there's some clear tactical reasoning behind it. I'm going to go ahead and show that to you now. So if you take a look, what happened with the Aussie formation is that it ended up crystallizing into a fairly straightforward 4-4-2. I was a little bit worried about this because, as we noted, Mary Fowler was having some issues in her last match, and Sam Kerr working a sort of horizontal axle chain with her. I wasn't necessarily sure that that was going to work. Now, this 4-4-2 has often been deep-seated, and Carpenter and Raiso they've made a few breakthroughs on the right-hand side. But for the most part, it's been, just sort of trying to cherry-pick balls and get long balls out to Kerr. And the Aussie offense has been, well, let's say, ineffective. I'm going to show you, actually, for the Outlook piece that I wrote, this is what I recommended for Australia. I kind of like the idea of bringing Caitlin Ford in as a service striker for Sam Kerr, having Haley Raiso and Courtney Vine work the wings like this. That way, the link-up play, you didn't have to rely on all of these long upfield over-the-top balls. You could get it going with some circulation and some rotations up front. But we didn't see that from Tony Gustafsson, so no real tactical subterfuge from the Aussie trainer. For that reason, the offense has been kind of static. Now, what has happened with England? I have to tell you that we were in for quite the surprise. Despite the fact that Sarina Wiegman did not change personnel at all, the formation that ultimately crystallized on the overhead tactical cam was very, very different than the one that we expected. Keira Walsh is hanging back to this back three. Millie Bright is very, very deeply pocketed, but Keira Walsh is clearly operating on her own solo axis here in midfield. And it could function as a back four at times. You could be absolutely justified in calling it that. Toon has received some extra support with Georgia Stanway working up alongside her, and then we have Hemp and Russo. So in stark contrast to the 3-4-1-2 that we've been seeing from England in the previous fixtures, with largely the same personnel, this is definitely a 3-5-2. Some people say there's not much difference between a 3-5-2 and a 3-4-1-2, but there is. This is the big difference here. And that's why England's has been very, very quick on the counter. They've generated a lot of chances through all of these, and they are up 1-0. It was Toon who finished up a ball that Lauren Hemp actually left for her. It was a beautiful, beautiful goal, and England deserved to be in the lead at this point. So moving forward, what can we do with Australia? One problem that we have here is that Caitlin Ford, who has hitherto had this superhuman tournament, is losing the battle against Lucy Bronze. Lucy Bronze is an excellent footballer, and it was always going to be a tough day for Ford, irrespective of what an amazing tournament that she's had thus far. I still advocate moving Ford in central to work as a service striker. We might see that from Gustafsson in the second 45. I think he's going to make at least one substitution. If he does, I'm going to go ahead and draw up a new graphic to show you the second half tactics for Australia. In terms of how my top performers are going, I have here, this is my article. I've been following it on the overhead and the minute-by-minute reports. I have some notes of my own here, along with the tactical boards that I've coded in. My two top performers for Australia thus far are Ellie Carpenter, who has made some fantastic runs forward. Unfortunately, there weren't very accurate crosses at the end of either one of them. And Mackenzie Arnold, the keeper, who made a massive save on Georgia Stanway in the opening few minutes on England's first chance. In terms of England, I've got my eye on Millie Bright, and I've got my eye on Lucy Bronze, and I've got my eye on Georgia Stanway and Ella Toon. Right now, Bright, and I'll add Bronze to this before the first half is out, are definitely my top two performers for England. I want to see how Stanway and Toon perform in the second half, but they're definitely candidates at this point. So we have Sarina Wiegman basically out-tacticking, out-maneuvering her opponent here, and that's why the Lionesses are up 1-0. We'll have to see if Tony Gustafsson has something in store for us in the second half. If he wants to keep the Matildas alive in their race for the title, he's going to have to earn his paycheck and do something. It's just one of those matches where, you know, it's being won on the tactics board by one head coach. And let's see if Gustafsson can find his way back in the second half. Well, it's full time, and there's only one thing left to discuss, and that would be the final product. So we did not see that tactical change from Gustafsson in the second half, although we did see one in the final 9 minutes of normal time. And here's the final article all pieced together here for She Plays, my last contribution to this wonderful website that I had the privilege of working for this summer. I went ahead and merged the tactical analysis of England and Australia, coding in both lineup cards, then showing the late Aussie tactical shift in which Tony Gustafsson threw everything forward. It was rather funny to keep an eye on the overhead cam while also watching him wildly gesticulate on the sidelines, screaming about what he wanted. Sam Kerr scored an absolute dream goal from distance, from about 25 meters out, and she's one of the reasons why, or that is the primary reason why she's included in the Australian top performers. Ellie Carpenter, who did make that error on the 2-1 some 8 minutes later, played an otherwise beautiful match, so I had no choice but to include her as well. And of course, the Aussie keeper Mackenzie Arnold for that early save on Georgia Stanway. Top performers from England, Millie Bright had another incredible match. I would say she had a bright match, but that sounds somewhat redundant. In any event, she made that 2-1 happen with a long ball as well. That was just simply marvelous, simply incredible. And the other three, it's a three-way tie between the three England attackers, Ella Toone, who silenced her critics, including myself. Love it when they do that. Lauren Hemp and Alicia Russo, the three attackers, all of which scored in 3-1 victory for the Lionesses. That's how we put it together. I'd like to thank the team so much for allowing me to volunteer. And again, my warm wishes to everyone over there in Sydney. Please take a well-deserved load off after all of your hard work in building such a wonderful website. And I encourage anyone and everyone out there, particularly football writers, to volunteer in the service of the women's game, because it's a fantastic game. And the major internationals are never to be missed. They're every bit as exciting as the men's internationals, with the fans, the flags, the passion, the tears, the exuberance, the elation, the joy, all of those good things. So the Waltzing Matildas are headed to the third place playoffs. It's not necessarily the outcome that many at the site were hoping for, I'm sure, but they played a great tournament, and we got to see some wonderful stuff from Sam Kerr in her first start of the tournament in the final competitive match en route to the title. They'll be in the third place playoff against Sweden on Saturday. So I've had Tom Waits running through my head throughout this entire tournament. And all I can say to the Waltzing Matildas is good night to the street sweepers, the night watchmen, flame keepers, and good night to the Matildas.